So, hello there, everybody who's tuned in to this update. Is the update for SwiftMCP. Uh, it's been 2 weeks since the last video update, and I didn't get to blog at all. So I just wanted to give you an overview of the current state of SwiftMCP and uh, some improvements I made over the last 2 weeks. Uh, in order to know what we have actually, what the updates have been, by the way, let me just get my text larger. So we do have the commit history on GitHub. No, not this one. Window. GitHub SwiftMCP. So code, and here are the commits since 1st of April, roughly. Yeah, so at the point of let me start again. So after SwiftMCP was basically feature complete, I started to work on an app that would allow me to access certain things from my Mac. Basically as a way to see how the APIs work out when you are in actually making an app with it. And so I have this API.me app here that I'm working on, and this has, let me just get my bearings here. I've got an aggregate server that has multiple sub servers that implement SwiftMCP. So for example, let's look at, say, email. This is a MCP server that I gave the name email handler, and it's got several tools. And one, for example, is to list the mailboxes. And there are two things that you might not have seen before. One is this is consequential flag is optional, so you can leave that off. But if it's off, then it's set to true. And what that effect of that is in open AI, if you access it from a GPT, it will not ask you for permission again after you've given it once, if it's a non-consequential, inconsequential tool. Inconsequential means it doesn't change anything that is of consequence. Yeah, so listing the mailboxes doesn't change anything, so that's safe. And I would like to point out the one thing that's very convenient for developers in SwiftMCP is the ability to return structs. Yeah. So in this case here, mailbox is a struct, and it only needs to be codable. And the other thing that you could do to ask it to add to it would be, I've got a macro that's add schema, where you can also annotate individual properties. Yeah, so like you can do add schema and then say, for example, the name is the name of the mailbox, and the special use is if there's a special use for this mailbox. Yeah, and these comments will also be used, and by the way, that's from import SwiftMCP. Remove the N here. So what this schema macro does, that's in SwiftMCP, it creates this metadata for the parameters. So you have the name of the struct, you have a description if there's one. Let's give it a description. Name and special use properties of a mailbox. Let's say, and if I collapse this again and build it again, then expand macro. Now it has this description in here. Yeah, so essentially like the MCP macros, the schema macro also gets the documentation comments from the type as well as the name and the special use fields and puts them in here. And this metadata then is used to create a schema, a JSON schema for it. And this way, for where do I show that best? If you look at the Open API representation, this information is there as well. Yeah. So I've started my server here. Let's look at if I do a curl localhost 8080 slash open API JSON. Yeah. Where did it go? I've not enabled it. I have enabled it. Open. It says not found. There might be a bug in here. So this is on and this is on. And let's just actually disable authentication for now. Maybe that's the problem. 8080. It should work, but it doesn't. Oh, I misspelled it. Open API. Open API. Okay, and we put this into pb copy so that we can have a nice look at it in TextMate. And so if we look for the mailbox previous list mailboxes, in the success case, it gives me items that have these properties that I had in the. So if we put this next to each other, is that possible? Here. And not this. So you see, this is now the description, name and special use of this mailbox, the properties, the type string, the special use, yeah, type string. It's all represented here as a struct. And this is one of the advantages that the Open API schema has over MCP, because MCP can only return three different kind of things. It can return a text, it can return an image, or it can return a file attachment. But the problem with the file attachment is it has to have the entire base64 contents, base64 encoded data in it, and that overloads the context. So it's not of good use at the moment. Yeah, but The other thing that I could show you actually when we have this running, if I run the inspector, okay, let's update. This is a tool from Anthropic that allows me to also interact with the MCP server. And here's the window. Go there. We can. I've got authentication off. List tools, list mailboxes. Yeah. The list mailboxes. It only has an input schema. Yeah. Because if you run it, let's run it. The response is here. The response of type text, and then the JSON of the result is encoded as a string. Yeah? And the tool is smart enough to understand, okay, this is actually JSON. So it represents it then again as a JSON struct, and even the LLM is smart enough to use it as such, but it's piggybacks on as a text thing. Yeah. So coming back to the state of things, so that's number one, that we have support for a JSON schema representation for structs as well. And by the way, almost all other Swift types are also somehow representable, with the exception of enums that have a associated value. But so coming back to this, so I have basically MCP servers for many different kinds of things. Yeah. And this is one for dealing with emails. Yeah. And my problem was essentially if I give the server to the transport, yeah, how do I route between, if I have multiple servers, but I still have I only have one endpoint. Yeah. If I have a server app like this, yeah, I only have one port under which it's serving. Yeah. So somehow I need to route to the different kind of subservers. Yeah. And the work for that I did over the past 2 weeks. So essentially now you can have an aggregate server that just instantiates multiple other servers. And then in this case, it has an array that's just references to the servers. And I split out the tool providing and the resource providing into separate protocols. So the protocol for MCP tool providing essentially means I need a MCP tool metadata array, and I need a call tool array. And so I can create my own aggregate server, which is an MCP server, that then implements a default implementation for MCP tool providing, and that just goes into the subservers. Yeah, so servers for each. If it's tool providing, then I get the MCP tool metadata from it. So that aggregates all the tool metadata into just one array. And the call tool does something similar. It goes through the servers, and if there's a server that is tool providing, then it sees if the name of the tool is present in this array, and if yes, then it calls the tool on this tool provider, this subserver, and that's all there is. And for resources, it's somewhat similar. I've got the an implementation here for retrieving a email resource, which is a part of an email. So emails might have a text part, a HTML part, might have attachments that are also individual parts, and each of these parts is addressable via an MCP resource in my case. And if you look at the inspector, yeah, the inspector, if I look at the resources, there's a template where you specify the name of the mailbox, a UID of the message, and then the section. Yeah. And so one thing what we could do is, if my inbox, let's say I list I retrieve message info, let's say at maximum 10 from inbox, then I get back these messages, and here's the part. So there's a part text plain and a part text HTML. So the part, this is part 1 because they start with 1. Part 1 of the message with this ID. So I can say to resources, here this template would be inbox. The UID I just copied, and there's a section 1, and then I can read the resource, and for some reason, yeah, here it is. So this is the text plain from mail. This is a URI, custom URI, that my MCP server is able to understand that this is the name of the mailbox, this is the UID, this is the part number, and then there's some that's inconsequential. It's basically a name for the file. Yeah, but the point that I'm trying to make is here, the what is this, completion complete? It asks for a resource with this template, and so essentially a resource is a read. Yeah, it passes this URI, and the response is it specifies the MIME type for the part, and then if it's text, there's a text, or if it's binary, it would be I think data or blob, and then it would be base64 encoded data. And there's a problem at the moment with Claude as well as with uh, uh, Cursor and others, that they can't deal with this properly. Yeah, so I can actually show you the same thing in Cursor, or I could show it also in Claude. Actually, I have Claude, got a Claude subscription. So what's in my email inbox? So this can retrieve the information, and I'm using something here because another drawback of Claude at the moment is that it can't access remote servers. But one way around it is to use something called Super Gateway, which bridges the gap. So Claude can instantiate Super Gateway, which then makes the connection to the HTTP server and translates everything to standard I/O. Yeah? So in this case, it's calling the list mailboxes. Yeah, it got back this text, and now it retrieves message info. So first it got my mailboxes, so it knows, okay, I've got this inbox. Then it retrieves message info from inbox, got a lot of text here back. And so let's check one more recent emails to give you a better overview. So retrieve message parts is what I just said, where it retrieves a certain part. So it retrieved the type text from 1 and 2, and said you have 54 emails in your inbox. and here's some information of that. Yeah, and it works okay with text, but there's a problem if you have emails that have only HTML, or you have sometimes you have a text part that says your email client doesn't support JavaScript or something of that sort, and the HTML part contains the actual email. So I need to implement a way to just extract the markdown from that. But that's a further step. So the point really of this, what I'm showing you here, is that I did a lot of work to be able to separate and sort of mix and match multiple servers to each other into an aggregate server. Uh, Actually, let's go back to the, here are our commits. So let's just see. Okay, so we split off the services, dealt with some bugs, fixed unit tests. Yeah, I had two areas. I had an MCP tools area and an MCP tool metadata area. They were essentially, I was always using the MCP tools, was just MCP tools metadata convert to scheme essentially. And so I removed that because the, if you look at the MCP, let's look at this, expand. So this has the MCP tool metadata, and MCP tool metadata also has information on the return type and the return description. If you want to give a return description, if it's an async, if it's throwing, if it's consequential, and this is all the meta information needed to create the JSON schemes for in and out. Yeah. So there was of course a problem if I had the issue if you had an aggregate server that wouldn't have any tools itself. Yeah, there was a problem because in that case it couldn't. Well, there's nothing to show it, and that's why I needed to get out the MCP tool providing protocol so that it can then implement it itself and thus still provide tools even though they're not its own. Then the other thing is I started to play with these resource templates and started to actually wrap my head around how they're supposed to work. But with the caveat, none of the MCP clients seem to support those. Yeah. So the idea is that certain things that are sort of only readable can be addressed with as resources via a URL. Yeah. And actually, let's look at this here. Yeah. And do I have, I don't have any resources listed here, but I do have this one template, and the template basically says, it's listed again. So the templates list just says, okay, we have a template that has to be a string, yeah, because those are not valid characters for a URL. And these things the LLM knows to replace with something. Yeah. So, for example, if in the case what we had before, where I'm looking for a certain section of a certain email in a certain mailbox, yeah, then the LLM knows to put those into this URL, and then it retrieves the resource via this resource read function. Yeah? Resource read gives it this URI, and the response is then this resource that you addressed. Yeah, and I've since seen maybe an even nicer way to implement that. I'm pondering whether I sort of leaning towards probably wanting to do that myself also, because at the moment in Swift MCP the resources are implemented such that uh, you have this get resource URL, and I've seen something like, for example, this email thing. Instead of this function being essentially just pass through, there could be in the email handler something along the lines of so this is the function, but the function could be with some scheme, like for example MCP resource, yeah, a template equals, yeah, for example server, not server, mailbox slash UID and then slash section, yeah. And I'm thinking that then you would have a func that says email resource, yeah, and it would match up these values with the one in the template, so that I don't have to basically right now I still have to manually, yeah, in this case I have this extract template variables function where it says from the variables the mailbox, the UID, UID string, and then those are all strings, so I need to convert it. And if it did it like this, it would abstract this away. Yeah. So I think that that's a nicer way. And then also I could implement it such that I auto discover these MCP resource things and uh, just have a simple function. Yeah. At this point, I have all the parts. So this is all that I really need to do. Yeah. Retrieve message part from mailbox UD. Yeah? So this would simplify this a lot. Yeah. Just by having this. And what I would probably do is, because a resource template needs a description. So the description it would get from again the name of the documentation of the function. Yeah. So this is the description, and then the description for the individual parameters it would get, of course, from, it would say param mailbox or parameter mailbox, the mailbox to retrieve from. Yeah. And this is the information that it could attach, but although actually there are no descriptions for individual parameters, just a description for the function. So we could use them if you want to or not. Yeah. But the point is, I'm thinking to simplify it like this. Yeah. So that you might have in multiple places, okay, there's this resource that has this, and there's this resource that has this. Another thing though, actually, it could even automatically create these templates. Yeah. It could actually say this is the scheme mail, and possibly I won't have to do that at all. Yeah? Because it knows, okay, here's a mailbox, here's a UID, here's a section, and then I would just, if the scheme is mail colon, then the first part is the mailbox, then the UID, the section, maybe something like that could be also a possibility. Yeah. Or if we want to be obvious, we can also say, okay, this is just mail slash slash. Yeah. So this is, I have to think about it. Yeah. All right. So that's that. And let's go back to the history. Yeah, one thing I implemented because of certain troubles. Let me show you the troubles. Yeah. If I cursor, open, say, developer, SwiftMCP. I have my MCP server connected here. Yeah. So find me an email with a PDF invoice. Yeah. I have in these emails a mailbox that has a text attachment. So it found one. So how this works is basically retrieve message info gives you for every message the headers, which is the date and the subject and the recipient, and then also the names of the bodies and the content types. And there is one that has content type application PDF, and it knows to get it. But you see, this is the problem that I then run into, because it retrieves the message part for the PDF, and it gets it back as an MCP resource content that has the data of the PDF base64 encoded. Yeah. And as soon as you do that, it overloads the conversation. You get this message: the conversation is too long, please try to create. So you never get anywhere. It's basically no way to get around that at the moment, with at least with Cursor. And I think Claude has the same problem. Yeah. If I do that in Claude, find me an email with a PDF attachment. Let's see what this does. So it gets the message info, so it gets all the emails. I found one email with attachment with a certain URT. Retrieve message parts. Let's see how Claude does. Maybe Claude doesn't have a problem, we don't know. Found an invoice. Here are the details. But it says some, okay, email. I would like the PDF itself. So there's one invoice attached. Let's see what it does. Retrieve message parts, yeah, okay. Section 2 is the PDF. And then you see there's some network interrupted. Does it still do it? No, it says, okay. There's certain problems with this because it's just being sent as text. And there again, I found an advantage of retry with no changes. I found that there's one thing that OpenAI is ahead of Claude, namely they thought through this case as well. What if a tool returns a large file, and what they're able to do is, if you return in a certain way, then OpenAI knows to actually deal with it as a file. And I'll show you at a moment. Okay, found one email. I show you the details. Retrieve message parts. And retrieve the PDF attachment. All right. So section 2, yeah, and then you get Claude's response was interrupted, which again means there's too much text. It overloads my context window. Yeah? So Claude gets an F as well. Yeah, but now let's look at that with ChatGPT. Yeah, and just to make sure that I've got this test GPT. And by the way, how am I able to access my MCP server with ChatGPT, there's a tool that's called ngrok. Yeah, is this one that actually serves my local HTTP localhost 8080 to a certain public URL, even with HTTPS. Yeah. So I don't have to do anything. I just have to start this, and from that point on, this URL gives me the open API. So I do slash open API JSON import, and there you have the whole open API scheme for all my functions I have on my MCP server. Yeah? And let's just update this, and I know that it works because I keep always doing it. So view, find an email with a PDF invoice. All right, why does it not work? Test. Find it in my inbox. All right, so now it's talking to getting inbox, no PDF. Get more, get 100 emails. Because it's a bit older, and it's my Gmail where I get all these notifications from YouTube and so on. Let's see if it can find it now. Mailbox limit 100. So I found an email with the PDF. Okay, here's a subject, date from, summary. Yeah. And now that I know, it now knows the UID of it. So I can say retrieve the PDF. And it now gets from this mailbox, this UID section number 2, and here's the PDF. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. I can click on it. Can I click on here? Yeah, and there you have the downloaded invoice. So this is one advantage that ChatGPT with OpenAPI has over current implementations of MCP servers. And it can deal with one file, but it can also deal with multiple ones. And the way how this is basically happening behind the scenes is I have this retrieve resource, and that returns an email part content. And if the return value of any function in SwiftMCP is implementing the MCP resource content protocol, then I'm able to wrap it up in a way that automatically behind the scenes you don't need to do anything. Yeah, you just need to return the resource content, and in that case, the OpenAPI access translates it to the format that that ChatGPT wants and needs. And now I can continue to have the PDF. Okay, analyze it, please. Yeah. So it analyzes the parties involved, line items, get some unit price, blah, 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 and so on and so forth, financial summary. So you see it has the content of the invoice available to reason with. So that's something for Claude and Cursor and all those to start dealing with properly. What else? Yeah, we've added the inconsequential. There's the schema, I talked about it. Yeah, so I also had, there was a bug that it wouldn't, if you looked at the structured responses, would not be properly represented, but that's all fixed now. So at this moment, I'm pretty happy with how SwiftMCP looks like. Um, the next there's a few next steps to do. Um, so I have to give a shout out again to Mette, uh, also known as NS Hipster, because I've been taking quite a few pages out of his book. He wrote this IMCP, um, and he has a different SDK, or how to say, framework for interacting with MCP. But I was using his services, yeah, calendar, contacts, location services, messages I haven't done, reminders, uh, and weather. Yeah. So by the way, we can also do weather. Um, what's the weather like in Kitzee, Austria? And this uses Apple Weather. Yeah, so you know that a Mac app or an iOS app has access to weather information, and it's called WeatherKit. And I've got this function that for a certain address gets the geo coordinates, and the geo coordinates in latitude longitude. Again, this is a struct. Yeah, it can then get the weather for. And here's the difference. The main difference between me and NS Hipster is that NS Hipster needs to define all his tools like this, and even things like latitude, longitude, he has to send as separate parameters. Yeah, whereas the same function in with SwiftMCP looks like this was the that's how it get weather for location. Yeah, so handler, we have current weather for location, and here location is just location, a codable struct that has a latitude and longitude, has descriptions, and due to this schema, the properties get their correct types and correct names, and all of that is then represented in the JSON schema correctly for Open API or even MCP to call it. And here we get a result. The result we also got, do I see that actually here? The result also was sent back as a struct. And see. Somewhere here at the bottom, you should see it. And yeah, I quite like sending structs around. I find it stupid to send it all as text. Yeah, when it can, if you have some function to deal with it, it can always understand the JSON, and even LLMs can understand the JSON. So that's why I prefer to be sending around JSON in as well as out. Yeah? All right. So let's see. Are there any questions? Do we have live update? Maybe later. I have some viewers, but I don't see any. Where would I see the chat actually? Any chat for MCP, for X studiox.com. Producing. Got this. Maybe a live cut. No, I just want to see. Why was there? I'm on full screen and I'm there. and it shouldn't show there's some problem with the X thing. Because I'm sending the video, I see that there's a frame here, but it still shows the waiting thing. Okay, well, we'll see later if it worked or not. So next things to do. There is basically just a few things to do on SwiftMCP, like what I said with the resources. Something similar as the resources we could also do for prompts. Yeah, but it's quite pointless at the moment to actually implement all these things. Where is my inspector here? To implement all of these things because no client supports them. Yeah, so I could do all of that, yeah, prompts and resources and routes and sampling and logging, yeah. But if there's no client that actually supports all these features, where's the point? So I was thinking if maybe uh, I should try to implement an MCP client that actually supports all these things so that at least I can test it with something. Yeah. Um, uh, Another thing, there's been a recent update in the spec for uh, MCP to not always have to require the SSE back channel, because right now with a remote server, messages are sent via HTTP GET to a messages endpoint, and then the response, which might take a few seconds until the response is ready, gets then sent on a channel that's kept alive that has the SSE traffic. And one improvement there is if a client supports a newer version, he can also get the response right away on the post request. Or it's a post to the messages endpoint. So post messages and response back on the same channel, and you don't have to keep alive an SSE channel. Another thing is to be able to send notifications when the list of resources changes. Yeah, but as I said, it's kind of pointless. Even the file server, MCP server, that's published by Anthropic, yeah, file system, Anthropic MCP file system, I think it's called file system MCP server. Even that doesn't do any resources. Yeah, it just has functions. Can't find it now. Pools MCP servers. Yeah. So maybe I should just lean back here and wait for that to be implemented, because right now everybody, and that includes Cursor and Windsurf and Claude and uh, even uh, VS Code, Visual Studio Code, insiders, uh, they all don't support MCP resources. It's like, okay, MCP, that's tools. So for most of the world, MCP at the moment is just tools. It's a bit sad because the standard is much richer than that, but the bandwagon at the moment just says MCP and it's a bunch of tools. We'll see where this goes. Yeah. If at some point that is properly all implemented, then of course I want to have an implementation for that as well. And as I said, with prompts, yeah, prompts and resource templates, I think that's a very nice use case to use decorators as well. And the decorator in Swift is a macro, because the macro, how that works is at build time, it had access to all the source code and can pick out things from there and create additional hidden variables, which you then at runtime can make use of. And that's the nice thing about macros that enabled all of the Swift MCP stuff. So that's it now for Swift MCP. So what I'm working on top of that, sort of as an extension of it, is or rather reuse of parts of it, is I have one project where I made use of JSON schema, and I I do have this other framework. Let me pull that up also. That is Agent Corp, and there I have for accessing LLM servers. I have chat. I have the API class, yeah, and the API class has this function to create chat completions, yeah, but these chat completions are just chat completions responses, yeah. Now, a while back, it was introduced in ChatGPT, and then later also in open, how to say, open source models, uh, the ability to constrain the output to a JSON schema. And I made use of that in another project. So I created myself a version of this chat completion where the result is something that is it's decodable and representable as a JSON schema. And that allowed me to do something like this, where, let's say here, where I give it to chat messages essentially, and then say, and now return to me a decomposer result. And decomposer result, you see here the add schema and the properties, yeah. And this is not using Swift MCP at the moment. It's using something called Swift JSON schema, which I've found on the internet. But I'm thinking, actually, I want to replace that with my implementation, because I don't need this, and I don't need this property. I just need a documentation comment. Yeah, then I have the same effect, and I want to this create structures chat completion. I want to move into my agent corp, where this is just a normal thing to do. Yeah. The other thing that I also learned when implementing Swift MCP was the thing about macros and how to get a JSON schema representation for the tools and the server. And so in Agent Corp at the moment, the whole thing is a bit, yeah, it's kind of similar to how what did I call it? Tool? Agent Corp tools, include tools, thing of functions, local function. I did it such that you have a public struct that has the name, description, parameters, and then there's a block. Yeah, and the block is what gets executed, and that's painful and a lot of boilerplate to write. Yeah, and then you essentially you have a block of something that gets called, and this is the reason why I have this philosophy with Swift MCP. I don't want to be having to do that. I want that to be happening for me. So I just want to have have a function, yeah, that I decorate add tool and give the meta information as documentation, and go about everything as if there wasn't any MCP at all. Yeah, and so this is the second outflow from SwiftMCP that I'm going to. Uh, so number one, I want to move my schema creating for structs into Agent Corp. Number two, I want to migrate the tool representation to use the MCP one, because it turns out the way how tools are represented in MCP is exactly the same how they are represented for normal LLM function calling, tool calling. So that that will simplify this quite a bit here as well. Yeah, and uh, then the next step, of course, for Agent Corp is to implement the new responses API, so that I can get to start creating my agents with the new agent framework from uh, not with the agent framework, but with an agent framework that uses the same backend as OpenAPI, and maybe also then other services like local Olama or LM Studio. Yeah, but all right. So do we have any questions? I'm checking. And Twitch, I don't see any. Is there anything on X? No, doesn't seem like it. We could also check on YouTube. YouTube. Where's my YouTuber? My I don't have any views at the moment. Yeah, so uh, it's almost an hour now, so I think we can wrap this up. Thanks for listening. Oops, that's not the one. Full speaker. Hi there. So in summary, Swift MCP has matured a lot. Yeah, we now support essentially all the kinds of things that you can have as input, as long as they are codable, sendable types. And also for output, we support any kind of output. If it's a codable, it gets encoded as, well, it has to be codable. But if it's a struct, it gets encoded as a JSON string. If it's a pure text, it gets sent to text. If it's MCP resource content, then it will be wrapped accordingly. So either for MCP or for OpenAPI. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you if you have any suggestions, or if you find when implementing Swift MCP in your own apps, if there's something that I can do to make your life easier. Apart from that, give a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. So this will end. Okay, now no, that's nonsense. It will end by itself. We need to stop YouTube. YouTube Studio. And end the stream. Okay, goodbye.